this weekend, we're going to be continuing our series. We kicked off a series last week called Tethered, where we were talking about how we're built for relationship. And we're built to experience relationship together. There's a verse, and I want to say this. When we look at our relationships, we find these moments where we're connected to somebody else. We're connected or we're tethered to other people. But our relationships we need to find ourselves in this relationship of three. It's not just us and another, but we find ourselves in a relationship of three, of us, another, and a relationship built on the Lord. Our theme verse for this series comes out of Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 12, and it says, "Though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves, and a cord of three strands is not easily broken." It talks about a cord of three strands. Who's our three strands? You have those you are in relationship with, and then you have God involved in that as well. You see, when we allow God to enter our relationships are forever changed. It's interesting when you see relationships built on the Lord versus relationships built on our own struggling or our own willpower. When a relationship is built on its own, you see a lot of selfishness in a relationship. But when your relationship is built on the Lord, the way we talk is different. The way we serve is different. The way we listen is different. The way we play is different. The way we forgive is different. The way we process offense, which is one that we talked about last week, and if you missed it, go back on our website and watch it. But the way that we process this offense from others is different. You see, everything about our relationships are different when God is involved. The way we love is different. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is a relationship tethered with selfless love. And I've titled my message today, "What's Love Got to Do with It?" I tried to get the band to play it for us, and they said, "I don't think so." But we're going to be talking, Pastor David said that should have been like the walkout song today. What's love got to do? But I relent. We're going to keep going. What's love got to do with it? What's love got to do with our relationships today as part of a Christian relationship? Now, I know in here, when I said, today we're going to be talking about love, some of your eyes rolled so far back in your head that you saw the person behind you without even turning around. Because you're like, I've heard a million of these, and now you're going to hear 1,000,001 sermons of how we should love as Christians. But this isn't just a message today. In fact, I would say this isn't at all a message today about romantic love. We're not going to be talking about romantic relationships. Today, we're talking about love in every single relationship that we have. Whether it's a friendship relationship, whether it's a coworker, whether it's family. You could probably tie some of it into a spousal relationship, fathers and sons and mothers and daughters, and any relationship that you can think of. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Every relationship. You see, there was a time in the Gospels, there was a time in the book of Mark where the Pharisees, the religious leaders, those people who were supposed to know everything about what it meant to follow God, they were having this religious debate about what could be the greatest commandment. What is the greatest commandment in the Bible? And this was a debate that wasn't new. We read about it in the book of Mark where it says they approached Jesus. But this debate was something that had been happening for centuries because they had 613 laws. 613 laws that they were required to keep. There were 365 negative laws, and there were 248 positive laws. Now, one of the favorite things, imagine this, okay? One of the Pharisees' favorite things to do would they would sit around and they would debate which of these laws is the greatest. And one Pharisee would say, I think this one's no. That one doesn't even hold a candle to this law over here. This is the greatest law. And they had actually separated the laws into two different categories. They'd separated them into major laws and minor laws. And the Pharisees said probably a similar thing to what you think today. How could you ever follow fully 613 laws? So they decided if we're going to separate them into the major laws and the minor laws, then we'll just focus on the major laws, right? Those are the important ones, and then we won't focus so much on those minor laws. Now, we know as believers today that that's foolish. That's absurd to think of, because we know in James it says, if you're guilty of breaking just one of these commandments, you're guilty of breaking the whole law. That's what they believed, but they couldn't physically do it. They couldn't physically say, we're going to keep every 613th law that there is. But now they got Jesus, the Son of God, standing in front of them. He can answer this, and he can put this debate to rest for all time. And they ask him, Lord, what is the greatest commandment? And Jesus starts in Mark 12. He starts by quoting Deuteronomy chapter 6. And he says this in Mark 12. He says, the most important one, answered Jesus, is this: Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. And then he goes on to quote Leviticus after that. He's quoting the Old Testament, and he goes on to quote Leviticus, and he says, and love your neighbor as yourself is more important than all burnt offerings and sacrifices. In other words, they asked Christ what the most important law is, and he says it all boils down to one commandment: love. Love. That's what there is. If we love God, we will experience his love within us, and we will express that love to others. As believers, do not live by rules, but we live by relationships. We live by the people that we love. A loving relationship with God is first and foremost. Number one is what you have to have. But that loving relationship that we have with God enables us to have a loving relationship with others. That's the cause and effect. There's a passage I want to use today that I feel every preacher uses when talking about this subject of love. Now, I got to be honest with you, church. I tried really, really hard to not use this passage because I felt like man, this passage is so cliche when it comes to talking about love. Lord, I don't want to use this passage. In fact, sometimes my wife and I, when we're driving in the car, and I use her a lot to brainstorm when I'm preaching and in the early process of it and say, this is the subject. And so when we're driving in the car, I'll record our conversation so I can go back and listen to it when I have ideas then to preach. And I almost played the recording. I decided not to, but on the recording, you can hear me say, what if I used, and I can't believe I'm about to say this, 1 Corinthians as an example of love. And then you can hear me on the recording go, ugh. But God kept bringing this passage back to me. And I in fact, I tried to write a whole sermon not involving this. And God said, this is my example of love. Why would you not use it? I gave it to you in the Word. So I'm going to read this today, and it's the example that Jesus gives us. It's the example that God gives us out of 1 Corinthians. It says this: love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast. It is not proud, it does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. Now, if you've ever been to a wedding, you may have heard this passage before, because it's preached a lot at passages about what love is. But the context of this verse is what I find interesting. There is no example in the context of this verse that they're talking about romantic love. It's talking about a broad band. It doesn't say the way you should love your husband or the way you should love your wife is like this. It just says this is what love looks like. Now, if Jesus came and he said, here's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to love the Lord your God, and you're supposed to love your neighbor. And then a few chapters or books later, we get this example of what love is. Love is patient, love is kind. I believe that that's God saying, this is the kind of love I'm talking about. This is the kind of love I'm talking about for every relationship in your life. So right now, before we go any further, I want you to get this idea of romantic love out of your mind, because we're not talking about romantic love today. It may carry over into your romantic relationships, but that's not the primary focus of what we're talking about today. We're talking about how do we love all people? How do we love our brothers and sisters? How do we love our enemies? How do we love the people when we leave these doors today? And the definition of love, I think we can split it up into 4 categories of what we read here in 1 Corinthians. And we're going to look at how these categories can shape our lives. And we can see examples of the way Jesus loved like that. That's why I love the Bible, because we get a command of what we're supposed to do, and then Jesus gives us the example of it and how it looks. And so today we're going to split this 1 Corinthians passage into 4 sections. And the first one is this: the posture of love. The posture of love. In our list of love attributes in 1 Corinthians, it starts with a posture of love. And what I mean by posture is, I mean how love carries itself in your life. How love is an attitude of your life, inside and out. Because I believe that love shows up on the inside of us before it ever shows up on the outside of us. And he starts with the first 3, and he says this: love is patient, love is kind, love is not proud. First 3, love is patient, love is kind, love is not proud. These 3 attributes describe this posture of love that I believe can be summed up into one word, and that word is compassion. Love is compassionate. You see, selfless love is compassionate, which has nothing to do with what we do, but it has everything to do with how we feel and how we treat and how we act towards another person. Like and love are 2 different things. My wife and I used to get in arguments. This was early on in our marriage, and because we don't argue anymore, you know. And we'd get into arguments, and she would say, Mitch, I will always love you, but I do not like you right now. And that was fair. I was being a bum. I wouldn't like me either in those moments. But like and love are 2 different things. We're not called to like everybody. There's going to be people you just don't like. There's going to be people that you just don't care for. They don't mesh with you. But we are called to show compassion and love to all people. God calls us to do that. If any one of you has ever been on a mission trip, especially to a foreign country, you understand this idea of compassion. I went on a mission trip to Mexico a few years ago. I've shared about this in the past sermons before, but we built a house for some people in 2 days. It was really cool. But on the third day that we were there, after we were done building the house, we went and we served in a food shelter. And we served, I think it was lunch that we served to these people. And we witnessed people who showed true compassion. Now, I'm not talking about the people who were served. I'm talking about the people who did the serving there. They did this every single day. And the people that would come to this food shelter, man, they were dirty. Some of them were drugged out. Most of them had dogs with them. Most of them smelled a little funky. But the people who served in this food shelter day in and day out, they did not judge or condemn them. They did not tell them that they needed to go get cleaned up first before they got served, before they could eat. No, they showed them compassion. They fed them. They talked with them. They never turned anyone away. They never told anyone they couldn't have more food. They made sure everybody was absolutely full for the day. And that day we served around 300 people lunch. And they did that every day. The people in this Mexico community lined up every single morning in hopes that they might make it through the door. And every day, every single one of them did. And the people that were serving did it with a glad heart and loved them. You see, the opposite of compassion is condemnation, which Jesus as perfect and holy God in human form, Jesus had every right to condemn, but he continually chose and showed compassion. One of the stories I love that really illustrates this comes out of John chapter 8. And in verse 3 it says, "The teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought in a woman caught in adultery. They made her stand before the group and said to Jesus, 'Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. In the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. Now, what do you say?' They were using this question as a trap in order to have a basis for accusing him." Now, what was the trap that they were trying to set here? Seemingly, there was no right choice for Jesus to make in this decision. If he said to them, "No, you should stone her," he would violate the Roman law, which stated that Jews could not execute people through capital punishment. And it would also contradict all of his teachings on grace and mercy and forgiveness. But if he said, "Let her go," he would violate the Mosaic law, the law of Moses, which would allow the leaders to convict him of being a false prophet. Some might say in this situation, Jesus was caught between a rock and a hard place. But look how he responds here. "But Jesus bent down and he started to write on the ground with his finger. When they kept on questioning him, he straightened up and said to them, 'Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her.' And again, he stooped down and wrote in the ground." I picture this scene. The mob has surrounded this woman. They're ready to condemn her, but really it's not about her. It's about tripping up Jesus. And he bends down and he starts to write in the dirt. Now, the Bible doesn't say what he wrote in the dirt, but there's many scholars and biblical theologians, credited ones, that believe that he bent down and started to write the sins of every person standing around watching. in the dirt. That's not biblical. It doesn't say that in the Bible, but there's some that believe that that's what he did. He was writing something nonetheless, and whatever he wrote convicted those, because look how they responded. At this, those who heard began to go away at it, one at a time, the older ones first, until only Jesus was left, with the woman still standing there. Jesus straightened up and asked her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" "No one, sir," she said. "Then neither do I condemn you," Jesus declared. "Go now and leave your life of sin." He doesn't just say go and continue living your life. He gives her a challenge. She doesn't get off scotch-free. He says go and sin no more. Leave that life. But Jesus shows compassion to this woman. Selfless love is compassionate. It's not condemning. Jesus was patient with this woman. Jesus was kind to this woman. Jesus didn't swing around his authority and his pride towards this woman. And it all started with the heart of Christ. You see, you can't be patient, you can't be kind, you can't be humble if you don't have a heart posture of patience, kindness, and humility. That's why it starts with the heart. Where's your heart? Where does your heart lean? Where are your first thoughts in your mind when something is done against you? When you see somebody, what's your first mind say? "Oh, can't believe that person." Or does it say, "Oh, my heart breaks for this person"? Start by looking at your heart posture, and then you can look at what number 2 is, and that's the practice of love. The practice of love. The practice of love focuses on how we treat others. The words used here in this point were chosen very, very specifically because selfless love is something you have to practice. It's not something that always comes naturally. It's not something that you just is built into human nature. But look at these qualities on the practice of love. Love does not envy. Love does not boast. Love does not dishonor others. Love is not self-seeking. When Christ walked this earth, he demonstrated and practiced a love that was in line with all of these principles here. He practiced a love that he did not envy. He practiced a love that didn't boast. He practiced a love that didn't dishonor others. He practiced a love that wasn't self-seeking. And there's a story in the book of Luke chapter 5 that talks about a healing that Jesus does. Look what it says about this healing, starting in verse 12. One time, Jesus was in a town where a very sick man lived, and the man was covered with leprosy. When the man saw Jesus, he bowed down before Jesus and begged him, "Lord, you have the power to heal me if you want." I love that. If you want. Kind of saying, Jesus, I hope you want, but you can do it if you want. And Jesus said in verse 13, "I want to heal you. Be healed." Then he touched the man, and immediately, the leprosy disappeared. Then Jesus said, "Don't tell anyone about what happened, but go to the priests. Go, let the priests look at you and offer a gift to God for your healing, as Moses commanded. This will show people that you are healed." Who does Jesus tell to give the glory to for this healing? To God. He says, go and make a sacrifice to the Lord. Who does he tell the man to tell about the healing? Nobody. He says, don't tell anybody. Show the priests, but don't tell anybody. Don't boast about it. Don't brag about it. You see, the healing wasn't about him, Jesus. It was about God. The healings that we see all over the New Testament aren't about Jesus. Jesus came to point, to show the way to God. He gives God the credit. Selfless love gives God the credit. He says, go and give a gift to God for your healing and tell no one. Now, society says a lot of times, push yourself. Look out for yourself. Sell yourself. You know, it's all about number one. Talk about the good things you've done. Sell yourself in any way you can. But selfless love practices love in a way that's not boastful. It's not envious. It's not dishonoring. And it's definitely not a love that is self-seeking. You see, we should be always practicing a love that's not about us. It's not self-seeking. We have a staff meetings on Monday. Every Monday morning, we meet as a staff and we spend time praying, we spend time talking about our weeks. And one of the questions that I always asked in this staff meeting was, who's somebody that you caught doing something good this week on our staff? Who's somebody on our staff, specifically in this room, in the staff meeting room, that you caught doing something good this week? And we would share people who went above and beyond their jobs and served and loved others. And I had one staff member, I told them I wouldn't call them out, but I had one staff member that pushed back a little bit to me. And they say, I don't want to be recognized for the things that I do that are above and beyond, because I don't do them to be recognized. I do them to serve and love my friends here at the church. And it challenged me a little bit. Now, the point of this exercise was to encourage people, but they saw it. Dang it. I just whittled it down, but I didn't mean to. But they saw it as seeking themselves. They saw it as seeking to be lifted high. And they didn't want that. They wanted to practice love, not to be recognized. And so I stopped. I stopped asking that question at staff, because I think we should celebrate those things and people shouldn't just go overlooked. But I also think that we should be going above and beyond because God calls us to go above and beyond. God calls us to serve selflessly. That is a practice of love. Now, love is revealed in how we relate to others, not how we elevate ourselves over others. Which leads to our third point today, and that's this: the power of love. The power of love. I'm not talking about Huey Lewis and the News, all right? We're hitting a lot of oldies today. I love it. The power of love. I'm talking about the power that love has if we first focus on the posture of love and then the practice of love. We get to see and experience the power that love has. This speaks straight into how we respond when love is tested. You see, 1 Corinthians goes on to list the attributes of love as love is not easily angered. Woo. Love keeps no record of wrongs. Another ouchie. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with truth. Now, that might be one that you say, okay, I can get on board. I don't struggle with that, but we'll get to you in a second. That's okay. Now, this is where the rubber meets the road. When it comes to love is not easily angered, love keeps no record of wrong, love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with truth. This is where we practice love. This is where we see it lived out. I'm pretty easily angered most of the time. I'm just going to be honest. I'm pretty easy. I can keep a laundry list of wrongs done against me. It's not hard to do. And I think most everybody in here can agree that everybody loves a common enemy. You've experienced this. Maybe you don't fall in line and say, well, I don't know. But you've experienced where someone walks in to a conversation and says, can you believe what Harold did over there? And what did Harold do? Oh, he said this. And then before you know it, everybody hates Harold. He didn't even do nothing. But everybody can rejoice with something that's been done wrong. I was an angry young adult. I was an angry young man. In fact, many of you probably wouldn't believe this about me, but I had to go to anger management counseling when I was in high school. I went and saw an anger management counselor. My counselor kept falling asleep during our sessions, which made me more angry. And it kind of backfired the whole situation. I'm still bitter about it today. But I was an angry kid. And I have had to work really hard that wouldn't be my first response in situations, to lash out in anger. And I can still be pretty easily angered. But what I've been learning and working to do is be quick to forgive and quick to keep less records of wrongs. Jesus had this encounter with this man who was vertically challenged in the Bible named Zacchaeus. He was hated by everyone in the city because he collected the taxes, and he collected more than he needed to. The Bible straight says he was a thief, and he collected a lot of money. But look in Luke chapter 19, verse 5. It says, when Jesus came to where Zacchaeus was, he looked up in the tree, because Zacchaeus had climbed a tree to see Jesus. And Jesus said, Zacchaeus, hurry, come down. I must stay at your house today. And Zacchaeus hurried, and he came down. He was happy to have Jesus in his house. Everyone saw this. They began to complain. Look at the kind of man Jesus is staying with. This is that, like, they're calling Jesus Harold. That's what they're doing right there. Zacchaeus is a sinner. This sounds to me like a bunch of people who are fairly quick to anger, a bunch of people who keep records of wrongs, and being that the Bible said that everyone who saw this, I might add that they were rejoicing in evil by gossiping about it. That's how the people responded to Zacchaeus, but look how Jesus responds to Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus said to the Lord, I want to do good. I will give half my money to the poor if I have cheated anyone. I love that. He says, if I have cheated anyone. He knows he cheated people. But he's like, Jesus, if you find out that I've cheated anyone, if I have cheated anyone, I will pay them back 4 times. And Jesus said, today is the day for this family to be saved from sin. Yes, even tax collector is one of God's chosen people. The Son of Man came to find the lost people and to save them. Jesus was patient, kind, not angry with him. He didn't keep a record of wrongs that Zacchaeus had done. He didn't have this running total of the amount that he had to pay back. And he rejoiced in the truth that Zacchaeus was a changed man. And because of that, his whole family, I love that. Zacchaeus' whole family was going to be saved. We see Jesus do that all over the place, where one person is seeking Christ, and he says, your whole family will come to faith in me today. Church, if we love one another, we have to do this. We have to. Listen, love is not supposed to be faked. But let's be honest, there's a lot of these on the list that we read today that we can come in and kind of phone in and fake it at the church. They can come in and fake being patient at church, but our kids tell the real story, what our patience really looks like. They can come in and fake being kind, but the road rage tells the real story. We can come in and fake humility and compassion, but our social media might tell the real story. But you cannot fake being slow to anger. You cannot fake being humble. You cannot fake keeping no record of wrong. You cannot fake rejoicing in the truth instead of evil, because the power of love reveals all these things. And if we're truly selfless in our love, people, these have to be evident in our lives. They have to be evident. Imagine a church, or imagine a home or a business that is built on these principles of love. Real love has the power to resolve offense without becoming bitter, which leads me to the last point today, and that's this. Number 4, the perseverance of love. The perseverance of love. It goes on to say in 1 Corinthians, the last ones, love always protects, love always trusts, love always hopes, love always perseveres. Always, in all things, this is what love does. And you see, there's one passage that I could think of in the Bible that shows this selfless perseverance of love. And it says this in John 3:16, "For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son. His love protected us, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life." Eternal life means God's love perseveres. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world. God's love gives hope, but to save the world through him. His love is demonstrated through our trust in him. Selfless love is not a one-time deal, but a long-lasting command that we're given. And that's really it. That we're called to love in this way. There's no special magic bullet life change thing that needs to happen. But we're called to love in this way. Hope Church strives to be a group of people who loves like this in every relationship that we have. So my question to you today is this. Which area do you struggle with the most? Do you struggle with a posture of love and having a heart for others, and that your first response isn't just anger and bitterness? Do you struggle with feeling compassion and sadness for others? But maybe then you struggle with the practice of love. You struggle actually doing it. You understand the practice behind how you're supposed to feel, but you struggle to actually do it. Or do you struggle with the power of love, the power to forgive, the power to let go of offense like we talked about last week, the power to control your anger and your records of wrongs? And with that, you would struggle to hold any relationship because you have a list a mile long of what everybody has done wrong to you. You see, here's the truth today of why we should work hard to have this kind of love. Because it says in Ephesians, follow God's example. Therefore, as dearly loved children, and walk in the way of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. Love, Christ-like love, is a sacrifice. It's not always what we want to do, but it's what Jesus showed us to do, and it's what God called us to do. So today, I don't have a huge action step for us to take. I will say that if you've never received Christ into your life, that's step one, is to experience his love, to accept him into your life, and then you can walk in his love. But I do have a step that maybe some of you need to take. And that we're going to ask our prayer team to come forward here in just a minute. And there's going to be multiple people up here in front of the stage that would love to pray for you. Because I really felt like God was setting on my heart as I came to the end of writing this sermon and leading into what he was speaking to me. I really felt like God whispered, there's people who can't love because they don't think they're worthy of love. They think what they've done doesn't let them be worthy of love. And if they can't receive love and grace and mercy in their lives, how are they supposed to show it? So what I want to do as we close the service today is I'm going to ask our prayer team to come up forward, those members of our Hope Leadership Collective that would pray with people, and just come up. And as we prepare to respond to what God's been doing, to respond to the words that God has spoken today, if that's you, if you just don't feel capable of receiving love, you feel that you're just too angry, you're too unclean, you're too resentful, you've done too much wrong, how could anybody love me? Especially the God who created the universe. How could he love me? Please come up and receive prayer today. Church, I'm going to ask you to stand with me today as we respond. Father God, we pray for those who are struggling, God, to feel your love and presence. I ask that you give them the boldness to come forward today and to receive that love in their lives. I ask that they come forward today and one of our prayer partners can share with them that they're not too far away for love and for grace and for you to speak to them, Lord. I ask if there's a relationship in their life that needs to be restored, that they come forward to receive prayer for the words to restore that relationship. And Father, I pray that we leave today with a boldness to walk out these doors and to love like no one else, to love like you in the example that you've given us. In your name, Jesus.